after this, and I have things I have to do. All right, everyone. Dr. Kennard here with BigZebra.com. Tobin Templeman, musician extraordinaire, and Grant Farmer, who is the lord of all redistricting, right?
I'd prefer to avoid that.
You prefer to avoid that moniker, that title?
That's a lot of trouble.
It's okay. So for everyone who, because whenever we talk about redistricting, right, or union organizing, people's eyes glaze over, but this is really important work. Grant Farmer, you want to talk about redistricting and what's going on in your area?
Well, every 10 years in the United States, we do our census for the purpose of properly allocating representatives and everything. But the political structure is
when
that
they
you need to
redistrict, they are like planning for the.
What is that, Tobin?
We lost
when
all
they
the-
redistrict, are they for what's going to happen to the city?
What?
That's what redistricting is, right?
No, it's setting political boundaries for, like where members of Congress, House of Representatives are elected from, where members of state house seats are, and stuff like that.
So with yeah, go ahead, Grant. I'll just be quiet.
Yeah, so you change the boundary every 10 years so that you maintain roughly equal population between districts, so that as population shift around, you don't suddenly have one member of House of Representatives or your state houses and stuff suddenly being represented by twice as many or three times as many people as another district. You want to keep those equal under the principle of equal representation.
Redistricting is important because what it does, it basically allows politicians still sitting, who are active, basically in many states, to carve up their states in ways that benefit their own political parties. So if you have a Republican-run legislature,
that is cutting in and out.
I think you're cutting out in it. I don't know.
Yeah, you're cutting in and out, Tobin.
Let's let him know, and I'll let him know in chat so that
man.
Yeah.
So if one political party has control of the state houses and the governorship, they can basically just dictate what the new boundaries are, which is gerrymandering. Bad thing. We really should avoid that.
Yeah. This is what's up, Rage. I want to say hello to Rage too.
Hey, how are y'all doing?
Doing okay. How about you?
I'm pretty good. Setting up a stream right now.
Very good.
Yeah, so right now in Minnesota, we have the problem of caucuses and conventions and stuff need to happen specific timing and stuff. By state statute, parties must hold their caucuses on the first Tuesday of February, effectively. So that's February 1st this year. But interesting enough, the redistricting of where the new districts are, that's not coming out until after we start doing our caucusing process of selecting who we're going to be nominating to run for those seats.
So okay, so let me just put a bullet point on this and tell me if I'm wrong. I like the throat action there. That sounds weird.
I'm sorry, I covered my mic, but I will mute in future.
Okay.
My apologies.
So what you're saying, Grant, and tell me if I'm wrong because I'm a little slow, right? And I want to say hello to Neil out there in the chat. You're saying is that you have to run caucuses to determine the candidates for the districts, even though you really won't know what the districts are until later on.
Yeah, we have to start the process of deciding things, and we don't know who's deciding what when we're starting to decide who decides what.
Right, dude. Yeah.
May I
So it's
ask a
like,
question of Grant?
sure.
I'm just curious because I'm not an American. How do, say, for example, there's a lot of new people moving into some area and other people are moving out, and
Mhm.
it's time to set new boundaries.
Yeah.
There's there's no way, because of gerrymandering, there's political interference in the process.
Yep.
How does that happen? Is there some sort of committee that decides where the boundaries are that is influenced by politics somehow? I don't understand.
So the organization that decides the new boundaries are the state legislatures,
Oh,
which are then approved by the governor.
oh.
So it is literally politicians getting to choose their voters if they agree amongst themselves, which is if both are
And,
controlled by the same
oh.
party, that effectively is what happens in many states.
What if there was? I'm not sure how most countries determine their boundaries. You know what? I'm interfering with what you were saying by asking you all these questions.
Yeah,
Um,
it happens.
do you have any thoughts about how this could be corrected? And then I'll shut up and let you.
So the two main ways that people usually suggest to correct it is nonpartisan boards
Mhm.
or having algorithm that is inherently unbiased, which no one can agree of any particular algorithm being actually unbiased because they want to control it.
Yeah.
So it's
So
kind of a
yeah,
mess.
just to bounce off what Grant is saying is that there's no perfect way of doing this.
No.
What there
Yeah,
is that
just less bad.
there are less bad, and that's all that we can hope for in this life, right? I mean, is
Mm.
less bad, something to keep the lid on the insanity that is our species.
And the problem with the less bad solutions is no one can agree which one is the less bad
Yes.
solution.
I wonder. There's a sort of an issue where suppose you have a state, say it's Columbus, Ohio. It's Ohio, and what if hypothetically a really big chunk of that state lives in the city, or maybe
Yeah.
2 or 3 cities, and the rest is dispersed in a rural fashion.
Mhm.
So, logically, you could do one of two things. You could you could distribute the congressional districts, 100,000 people at a time, via connected postal codes. But you could do it in the fashion of a pie, so
Mhm.
that the city is at the center of a pie, which
Mhm.
includes both rural and city voters, thus
Mhm.
dispersing the city vote. Or
That's
you could
what
work.
Republicans want to do, Big Zebra. That's
Yes,
what Republicans
yeah,
want to do, is to disperse the urban vote so
yeah.
that they are disproportionately represented in Congress.
But the argument that could be that if you did do the pie method, the people elected would have to represent different types of constituents. That's an argument. It's not maybe a good one.
Yeah.
But and then, or you could do it in a sort of spiral way, where you have connected postal codes, sort of coming out of the city and into rural areas. Each of them, so you'd be more likely to have rural grouped with rural, and city grouped with city voters.
Phil Lister, I just want to say this about, has it not occurred that the U.S., this is what Phil said, has it not occurred to the U.S. that having political people decide electoral boundaries is a recipe for corruption? And I'll say this, is that is a feature and not a glitch of our economic system. Because you don't have economic systems and political systems, exist separate from each other, right? They are mashed together. And the thing is that if you have large economic interests, they want to warp the system for their own ends. So this is the reason why you don't have anyone on Wall Street you don't have good regulation on Wall Street. This is the reason why you don't have good regulation of the U.S. police system, right? This is why you don't have a good enforcement of the Catholic Church. This is just a nature of the society and the system that we live in. Yeah.
As in Minnesota, where I live, the solution is if we have divided government. For instance, the state Senate is currently controlled by the Republicans. The House and Governor are currently controlled by the DFL. It basically is people argue for a long time before kicking it over to the courts, who then draws the boundaries. And that's what we find ourselves this year.
Yeah. That's how it is in Michigan. Gretchen Whitmer, ever since her third lockdown, she's been bogged up in court. Now her hands are tied. You don't hear from her. The Republican legislature pretty much rules the state, and she's governor in name only. And her ratings are just dropping. Like, even people that supported her at the beginning no longer support her because she's not able to be out publicly fighting for herself because she's tied up in court.
Yeah,
and she is threatened with kidnapping.
Oh yeah, the Wolverine Watchman.
Jesus Christ, they were going to murder her, I think.
Yeah, they were going to do an impromptu trial and execute her.
Yeah, I actually had a conversation with a repub that told me that was a Antifa plot. Like, I shit you not.
Yeah, of course.
Wow, Antifa's behind everything, and nobody knows it, including Antifa.
That and Satan. It's Satan, George Soros.
Yeah.
Antifa.
I don't know. You think that if Antifa is going to be kidnapping anybody, it would be the fascists.
Yeah.
You would think so.
I keep worrying that American democracy is like a really, really strong bridge that has taken so much weight.
Yeah.
And you're just worried that, instead of cracking and then being repaired, it's just going to fall apart all of a sudden.
For those of you playing Laughing in Disbelief bingo at home, this is where you start, where you check off the Weimar Republic square on your bingo card. Because I just want to say that the Weimar Republic, the republic that in Germany that existed between World War I and up until the Nazis took over in 1933, it did a really good job dealing with a lot of crap. But it could not, there was just so many shocks, so much pressure on that system of government that it just collapsed. And so you're right, there are structural breaking points of systems. Thankfully the U.S. has, deep institutions of representative government. Will those survive in the long term? I mean, once again, I think that the only reason why we're here in this system of government right now is because of COVID. If it wasn't for COVID, we'd have Donald J. Trump being president, and there'd be a lot more autocratic government going on.
And for people like me who are part of the planning process of these caucuses, normally redistricting is a annoying hassle. Later on top of that, Omicron variant surge happening right at the same time. You need to deal with all this stuff as well.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
So tell me this, Grant Farmer. Is there a way of doing this caucusing stuff strictly online, strictly distance?
Yes, but there's lots of laws and state party rules that make that complicated.
Yes. So it's not, even though it's possible, it's not really probable or really you cannot actually do it in reality.
It's the kind of thing where lots of emergency meetings need to be held and decisions need to be officially made by certain groups of people so that other groups of people can do things in a way that can be safer.
Yeah. Well, we've only had like 2 or so years to figure this stuff out. So,
people keep on hoping that, it's just around the corner that everything can go back to normal. So they keep on kicking the can down the road.
So Lister from Sweden, this is interesting. In Sweden, boundaries are reviewed every 10 years by Judiciary and Civil Service Commission. Unlike the U.S., the senior judiciary is not politically appointed. There you go. That's what I like about this channel. Besides the fact that it's my own channel, of course, is that we have a good international vibe going on here.
Yeah.
You know, something about this channel is how clean Dr. Kennard keeps the curtains. And there are never any cat claws in them.
This is
very
true.
well done. Well done.
It's one of the things I really try to do. I really work hard.
Mhm. Not a fleck of dust.
No, not at all. No, pristine. That's what these curtains are, everyone.
Oh, I wanted to ask Dr. Kennard about Pathos. The thing that surprised me about your report is that I assumed that Pathos, you guys were dissatisfied with Pathos because, you know, you wanted to put a link into to Facebook for sharing like that, and that the answer was probably always no whenever you wanted something done. But it's much worse than that.
I was, and I think most of us on Pathos were on the non-religious channel. We were expecting just to be there. Sure, there was always some kind of background tension because the people who own it are Christians, right? They're evangelicals. But
I didn't know that. Pathos was owned by, oh, Jesus.
Yeah, the management. If you look at the article in the description of the last show, you'll see the history of BeliefNet, who owns Pathos. So, but they were abnormal, and I said this in my goodbye post on Pathos. They have been abnormally tolerant of all the crap that I did on Pathos. Like I teabagged, rhetorically speaking, evangelicals for years. You know, I wrote things like just hilarious posts, but just constantly taking the piss out of them. There's a pun there somewhere. There's some kind of wordplay. And Hemet every single day, several times a day, he would just write about the very real horribleness of evangelicals and fundamentalists. And we were bringing them money. Once again, we brought in a majority of the traffic to their religious site. But it just showed you how tribe is more important than money, right? And how crazy does that sound? Tribe is more important than money. They're like, no, we don't want your money. We don't want to, we want to stay true to our belief system. And that's the reason why we were shown the door.
Yeah, that reminds me of The Simpsons on the Fox network, where The Simpsons would rip into Fox repeatedly.
Yeah.
But they were a cash cow for Fox, so it was like, to keep him on.
Yeah.
Well, really, that's not that surprising, though, because, I mean, politicians placate to people's religious beliefs to get them to vote against their own interest all the time. And I think that we see, people believe in these myths so much that they'll follow these myths to the detriment of their own success sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to ask, because I'm not a big deal writer, but I have been paid a lot over the years for writing. I was just astonished that they wanted to direct what you wrote. That, can you take a nicer tone or something?
I actually said I could take a nicer tone. I said that, there was a video series I did, Best Advice Ever, and I'm like, hey, guys, I can clean up. I can clean it up. Clean it up. And they told me. That's what I was told.
Damn.
So
I liked that.
That's the
series,
thing is
dude.
that if you
I
want,
watched many of those.
you can, as an editor, you can say to people, I want you to write on this subject in this fashion. That happens all the time.
Sure.
And that's editorial processing. But if you want people just to write for you, here's a blog space, write what you want, and you're not paying them directly, then what the hell are you doing?
There was money. I got paid to blog on Pathos. Hedman gets paid to blog. It isn't a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. It's like YouTube money, right?
Yeah.
It's like YouTube money.
But still, if they want to tell you what to write and what not to write, they have to send you a goddamn check. Here's $50. Here's $100. Write us an article on how to be a nice person.
Yeah.
I get angry sometimes.
No. I mean, obviously I've been holding back a lot about this, and yeah. And if you know anything about the internet, is the fact that if it's not controversial, if it's not showing hip, I mean, the stuff that we write, it brings in traffic for a reason. It's because people are interested in reading about these issues. And so what's Pathos going to be now? They're just going to be a bunch. I mean, there's still a non-religious channel on Pathos. I took a look at it the other day. And, good luck for being able to color within the lines. And maybe they'll be able to. I don't know.
Could I invite Tobin to speak? Because I think I talked over the poor man when I suddenly broke a blood vessel when it offended my writer-ness.
No, you're all good, Big Z. I didn't have much to say. I mean, I said it in that moment.
Okay, sorry, man.
Yeah.
It's all good. I enjoyed the points you had. You were talking about.
Well, it's just so infuriating when you ask people to volunteer their time and write what appeals to them in a blog format, and then say, "Oh, well, we don't like what you're writing, so you have to change." And just why don't you pay me to write about an article about 5 great things Christians have done? If that's the content you want, pay me.
Yes.
Yeah.
I used to write for Match.com, and I wrote like a bazillion articles about 7 things to talk about on dates, how to dress in the fall on dates.
That's interesting.
I had a bizarre one that almost gave me an aneurysm. 7 conversation starters at Halloween parties. And I managed to make these things really funny, which is why they like them. But you would get a headache from saying, okay, I got to write a conversation starter at Halloween. I can't use swear words, so and eventually I'd come up with it, but
I just speaking as a person who does what they the writing stuff, right? I was able to function within the confines of Pathos. Once again, they were able to let me do. I mean, I was able to do a lot of stuff that I wanted to do. I kept it clean mostly. Yeah. I don't mind.
Did they let you make fun of Catholics with a little more gusto?
They just basically left me alone.
Okay.
They left me alone. Even when I knowingly went outside the lines, because they're like, you shouldn't do this. It's like, okay, I wonder if anyone's going to watch me do this. I don't know. I'm going to try it out and see what happens.
Yeah. That's a great name for a column, Outside the Lines.
Outside the Lines, yeah. So, the people who are going to be on Only Sky, they just aren't the old bloggers from Pathos. We have a whole bunch of new people in too, so it should be pretty exciting, especially on the Only Joking, the comedy section that I'm in charge of. That there'll be a lot of, because I was the only comedy writer for the non-religious channel, but now we're going to have a lot. We're going to have. It isn't just going to be me. It's going to be people who I know and people who are good writers.
Can you reach out to your comedy bros, your stand-up bros?
Yeah, I already have.
Yeah, okay.
The
a lot of those guys can write well.
Yeah,
I mean,
the question isn't having too little content for Only Joking. It's going to be like, making sure that each piece of content gets its own breathing space so it can be out there and get traffic. And, because if you just kind of like shoot it like one new piece after another new piece after another new piece, I think it just dilutes how much traffic each post is going to get. So it's a question about timing things out.
Okay, well, congratulations.
Thanks.
Heck yeah.
Yep.
I really like the concept of the name, the Only Sky, and it was
Oh, I
based
love
on
that too.
the song Imagine from John Lennon.
Yep.
Like I
Mhm.
played the shit out of that song on my guitar and singing that one whenever I was a kid. Like
Oh, yeah, good.
I wrote a song whenever I was a teenager, and I was telling a family member the lyrics, and they're like, "That's already been done," and they told me to go listen to John Lennon's Imagine, and I was like,
Mhm.
"All right," and I did that, and like that song like took me over, and I had big headphones on, and I
Yeah,
had
yeah,
cranked
yeah.
it up, and it like really it like hit me, and I was like, "Damn, this dude said it so spot on."
Yeah.
Like,
I, I, oh, this is interesting. The girlfriend, hello, girlfriend. The JWs let you play that song. That might have been after the deconversion. I don't know.
yes,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm talking like my later
Yeah.
teens. It's crazy. I actually got a letter from the JW, and I'm really looking forward to responding to it. They sent me a letter in the mail, and it's real handwritten.
Oh,
Wow.
is it one of those we
Somebody
want you
took
back?
uh, you know, they don't know my name. They're just calling me dear neighbor, and
Okay.
I don't know this person.
Okay.
To me, at this point, it's still anonymous, but it is the JW.
Right.
Could
He's
Right.
you write
this
back to
person
them? Did
telling
they
me
give
go
you
to
an address?
yeah, it's a PO box, and I'm going to write them back
I
Could
think
you
that's
tell
because I
cool.
them
actually
that
do
you don't
enjoy that
appreciate sexual
putting pen
overtones
to
in the mail
paper
and the
is
letter?
fun.
Big Zebra, let him talk. What was that, Toby?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
What? What- it- hang on. What? No. What did you just say? The sexual overtones? How did you say that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I said you could write back and complain that their letter to you was filled with sexual overtones. But my joke interrupted what you were saying, and I need to learn better
Make
behavior.
them feel uncomfortable. That's beautiful.
Hmm.
Right on. I get it.
Yeah. So Rage is awfully quiet. Rage, are you not even on the first bowl?
You still here?
I'm smoking roach joints today, so I'm pretty lifted.
You're elevated. That's what you are.
Yeah. Well, I'm sitting here like kind of prepping for my the show I'm doing and kind of listening. Um, I was looking at the side chat and everybody's talking whether they get paid enough or they don't, and I'm like, relatively speaking, nobody does, because if you look at how much money the Bezoses and the Elon Musks are bringing in, not a goddamn person on this planet is making what they should be making. And I think that we need to start placating to people's gods with socialism and take out the word socialism because it's a four-letter word here, and just
Right.
placate to their god with to get them on our side, because I think that's what Republicans do to get them on the corporate side, and I think we could utilize that to actually do some damage.
So explain to me how that would
Whoa.
work out.
I don't know. I mean, you just really bring the Jesus message hardcore. It's
Oh,
harder for a rich man. Easier for a camel to walk through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to make it to heaven. I think that you could really spin socialism if you take out the words that are going to trigger them because they don't understand socialist theory. If you take out the word socialism or the word communism, if you take out like means of production, you can keep in like material interest because they don't understand those such things. But just spin it in a way that's gonna that propagates to their God belief, and you'll
yeah.
have them on board.
I see what you're doing there.
Hmm.
So, yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, I've been so quiet, and then all of that spews out of me. I've been thinking about it for a while.
That's good.
Your spew is always welcome here, Mr. Rich.
Indeed, indeed.
Hey, there he is.
You're muted, brother.
Oh
You're
yeah,
muted,
so
Rage.
I've got this, which is what I'm doing right now, my roast joints. But like when I finish these two, I've got the mother of all motherfuckers that I'm saving for after work, which is the roaches of roach joints, and it's gonna be a fatty. Like I'm looking. Today's a good day just for on the weed aspect.
No, that's good, dude. I'm glad to hear it. How does the non-smoking of the cigarettes going?
I'm down to like a quarter. Like I still smoke a little bit. You know, it's like I think I've been smoking for so long that it's almost impossible for anything to work. It's like discouraging, but it's more a mental thing. It's what I used to doing.
Yeah.
So I'll light a cigarette and I'll take like 2 hits, but then I put it right back out. So it's
But that's good. That's harm reduction, right? I
Yeah.
mean, and harm reduction is exactly what it is. It's harm reduction. You don't have to be, I mean, it isn't perfect, but you're doing.
Yeah, I have an appointment in 9 days, so I'm really hoping, like they'll tell me what's wrong with the foot. Either they're going to do the surgery or they're going to disable me. But I'm hoping they do the surgery because I really want to get off these meds. I've been kind of weaning myself off of them. I self-medicate with my weed. I don't really need much else. So, I've been kind of doing that. So, like going through this little changing period.
The surgery, from what it's basically what you have is, and tell me if I'm wrong, is basically like carpal tunnel syndrome, except it's in your ankles, right?
Yeah, it's a vein that goes under, kind of right underneath your ankle bone.
Yep.
And into your foot. It's a major vein, and it's because of my vein disease, and other things can cause it. It's called tarsal tunnel. The vein is swollen, and it's swollen up against that bone, and that's what's causing my pain. But that's on the bottom side of the foot. They can't really figure out because there's something wrong on the top side of the foot as well, and they can't really figure that out.
It's got to be a place on your foot where there's a lot of pressure put on it. My goodness, dude.
Oh yeah. It's unbearable to get through work, but I get through work. Like I've only missed 2 days since the diagnosis at work.
Yep.
But it's like I tell people all the time, I have a new pain tolerance, a new pain threshold every single day.
That's crazy, dude.
Well, can I ask what the vein disease is? I've never.
It's a degenerative disease. It's hereditary. My mother had it. Okay. I got it really young, like really young. It kind of weird. And it just the veins kind of clog up and stop working. So what they did in my right leg is they went in and burned the major vein shut, kind of forcing a rerouting of the blood into other veins. So that worked for a while, but now my right leg's just jacked up. So it's just unfortunate. Like my mom had it. I think it kind of jumps around. Like my brother has no issues. But my mom's dad, I believe, had it. I can't remember, but it's been in the family for a while.
Well, if you remember your high school biology about heritable traits, right? The Mendel P thing, the P like P pods, not urination. Everyone, it's like when does the trait emerge? So it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, people ask me like why I'm a socialist, why I'm so against like corporations and shit, and it's like I worked for a corporation when I was diagnosed with this. I had this hole in my leg for like a year, like this huge hole in my leg for like a year, and it was infected to hell. And I worked on it every single day, 12 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week for this car industry, a car company here. It's like a major industry. I've talked about it on my streams, Denzo, and they gave no. I would lose my job if I were to not do those hours, right? Like, and it's really the only good place to work here. So it was like, like they demand you to be a slave to the pretty much to the just degrading of your own health. And it's since then, since the diagnosis and my leg went to hell, I've had to find jobs that I can do, but now I'm to the point that I can barely do them because you can't do 12 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's insane to ask people to do that. We fought to overcome that shit, and now it's like we have regressed. Not only do we allow people to carry guns, but now like at work they're talking about going back to child labor in certain states. It's insane.
Sure. Yeah. Well, in Finland, they're talking about While in Finland, they're doing a 4-day work week, 6 hours a day, and that's the difference between a socialist country and the United States of America, right there.
And
Well,
when you put
So,
your
so
body,
you know, the point of that whole story is when I finally went to the doctor, got the diagnosis. They told me I was going to lose my right leg. So I've had that nightmare for like 6 years.
Yeah.
It hasn't happened yet, but it could still happen. Every time I have like a foot or a leg appointment, I'm a little terrified. You know,
oh yeah,
so
yeah, dude, yeah, understandable.
I'm very vain. So losing any part of me is like unthinkable.
I understand. I see the wordplay that you did there. Well played.
Yes,
Well played.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God! And of course, with COVID, if unless you're about to die, you don't get appointments.
Oh no, dude.
You know?
Yeah, you're screwed.
Yeah.
If you're not, elective surgeries in a lot of areas have just been shut off, just been cut
My
down.
first 3 months of long haulers, I never got a single treatment for COVID.
Yeah.
Not when I had it, not during, when it never went away. It was finally after just being persistent about it that they started treating it.
Hmm.
No, Jesse Bear, speaks truth here. Corporations have no loyalty. I had a family member go from wealthy and in the upper management of a corporation to getting laid off with no notice. Yeah, they don't know you anything. And what the thing is that they spin this myth, right? These lies about being part of a family, right? You go into any kind of shitty companies, and they tell you, oh, you're a family, up until the time they move the factory away, or up until they decide that you're redundant, and then it's like, well, you're family, but we're kicking you to the curb.
Yes, we've got a new family now, and they're in China, and we like them much better than the old family.
Yeah.
It's like dads who say, I'm sick of being a dad, and then they leave and never contact their kids again.
And I'm not even arguing against, companies moving overseas. I'm not arguing against this. My main argument is the fact that the government knew it was going to happen. Political parties knew it was going to happen. Economists knew it was going to happen because it always happens. This isn't the first time of globalization. This isn't the first moment that the world has known this burst of globalization. It was predictable that this would happen, and yet there weren't structures put in to help mollify, to help ameliorate, to lessen the effects of it. That's the horror. All predictable,
And we've done nothing. This Democratic administration, it's like they thought $1,400 was enough. Like that was gonna. No, like people are really struggling right now, especially with Omicron just raging through the country. People are missing work. The CDC did their thing, but the restaurant business right now is dying. I don't know if it's just here in Michigan or if it's nationwide, but the industry's dying. There's no money there. There's none.
It's because as you well know, if anyone's ever worked in the restaurant business, it's very thin margins, right? You gotta be able to flip tables.
Yeah. I mean, even the chains are closing. They're closing their doors.
What's that, Rehoboth?
I wonder if y'all are like this, or if there's anybody else who can relate to this. But whenever I hear, like, I make an acquaintance with a person, and then very soon after, they're like talking to me like, "Oh, we're like family, we're bros," like that. To me, I'm not saying it's horrible, but in my head, I start thinking like there's little red flags that go up, and I start wondering, how do you treat your family? And like, I don't know, it starts to worry me that something's going to go wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, well, especially if it's really fast, right? If someone, and that's actually a sign of borderline personality disorder, is the fact that they glom on you really fast, they love bomb you, or they, whatever, like give you a positive attention bombing. And so, you got to wonder what, your skepticism, your skepticism lights should be blaring on. I'm going to take care of this light situation here. I'll be right back.
Yeah, we actually have some sunshine here in Michigan. It's a rare thing for January for the sun to be shining.
Wrong side. I'll be right back.
Right on.
Yeah, here in Minnesota, it's gotten to be up to like 30 degrees for a high today, when it's been highs of like 5 degrees Fahrenheit for the past few days.
Yeah, we're up to 12 today, You know, the sun's shining, but it's still colder than piss.
Well, this is the problem, right? Is that it makes you, with the sun shining, it makes you think that it might be warm out, and then you go outside and it's like, oh, it's 9 degrees out.
Whoo.
Yeah.
Feel that wind nip across your nose.
Yeah, the cloud cover actually keeps in some of the warmth, so clear days in the winter can be harsh. But you know, like honestly, I'm just glad to see it because we went to January before it became winter. That's scary here in Michigan. You know, that like global warming, duh.
Yeah.
Climate change. I'm sorry. You know, people are dumb and will use the correct terminology against you because the problem is that the globe is warming. It just creates severe climate change.
Right. Climate crisis is what I like to use. I like to use the crisis word because it kind of gives you a more of an imminent, oh my fictitious God, it's all going to end, within our lifetime kind of stuff.
Yeah, well,
it's
definitely in our
wild.
kids' lifetimes, they'll see pop-up tornadoes if we don't do something about it. It's going to be like vicious shit. It's only going to get worse and worse.
Yep. Yeah.
I wonder if there's a predictable response we can expect from the right wing. For example, they've invested in things like the Heritage Foundation to declare global warming a myth.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just sort of wondering, what do you think their next move is? Or will they roll over and say, yeah, global warming is real, we've got to do something?
Well, you can, and it is somewhat predictable, right? So right now, the official Republican line is shifting from where it was like 30 years ago when they were saying, So at first there was denial, and then they were saying, well, man-made climate change isn't happening, and now you can see there's kind of like this pivot towards, well, how can we make money off this? How can we take carbon out of the sky, out of the air, and put it into the ground? How can we do this kind of technology and make money off it?
Yeah, I bet though that it's going to take a natural disaster. It's going to take a volcano erupting or whatever. It's going to take something pretty big to really, I think, shake people up enough to like.
Shit,
really,
don't mention that.
Probably a volcano would cool us off instead of warm us up.
Shit.
Yeah,
if Yellowstone blows, we're done.
Yeah, dude. Well, I think a lot of the states are done. If Yellowstone blows up, but that I don't think that's due for another couple of 100,000 years.
Yeah, I don't think it is either.
Right.
We won't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
But I mean, we are fucking with the plate tectonics. You know, our fracking has caused earthquakes here in Michigan. Oklahoma had one that made national news, and I've heard like even New York has started to get some tremors.
Well, people don't understand what fracking actually is. It's literally scooping out the juicy parts.
Yeah, you're draining the earth of the fucking fluids, basically.
And then you're trying to pump fluids back in. And it's like, I don't know how that could go sideways. How could that go wrong?
And like, the Democratic Party fully endorses fracking. The state. I was listening to this on Hereticals earlier because Chris lives in Australia and he's a conservative, but he would be like somewhere square in the middle on our American standards. Atheist pastor, and he was talking about like how here in America, and he's right. Like both of the extremes have kind of the voice, although I think it's much farther on the right. But because the Overton window is so far to the right that the extremes of the left really kind of come off kind of crazy, but there is no real center here in America. There's extreme right, and then the left is kind of forced to go extreme in response.
Well, the thing is, all right, the last time I had interactions with the atheist pastor is on Twitter when I called him out on something, and I forget what it was like. And so I think we've gone sideways from there, our relationship. And he is a conservative, and he says things that are specifically meant to blunt.
See, I don't get on. I'm never on Twitter.
He says things that specifically blunts the sharp edge of the knife here for the left here in the States. And so, like this whole false equivalency between the right and the left, for an example, that you gave reference to. I don't know about the entire conversation, but this is a common tactic amongst so-called moderates who are actually rightists, who are like, well, the right's bad, but the left is just as bad. No, we're not. No, no, no again.
No, yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, the left extremists are like super woke scold culture that's afraid to listen to speech. I mean, that's pretty much as far fringe left as you get. Where here in America, on the right is just full fascist.
Yeah, yeah. And what's the over under? What are the chances of the states falling into a fascist government as against to a Stalinist regime? I think it's pretty clear. Which way.
Oh yeah.
Which way the dominoes are going to fall on this.
Well, and that's the thing. Like most American socialists aren't Stalinists; they're Marxists.
No. Yeah. There's variations. There's a lot of variations. Actually, in the podcast, I like Revolutions podcast, which I advocate listening to if you're interested in this kind of Soviet history. By the way, there is a point after the Russian Revolution in 1917. There is now the newest episode is about how the left, how there is a revolution within the revolution within the revolution. So now it's the Bolsheviks, so-called communists, facing off against the left SRs, the social revolutionaries. So once again, advocate the Revolutions podcast, especially about the Russian Revolution. It's good stuff.
See, I'm not sure about that. I did watch this amazing, strange debate between Vosh and non-compete yesterday, socialist versus socialist, and it was this strange debate about political theory, and then Vosh walked him into the Socratic method. It was brilliant. Like, it was a fucking brilliant, but it was strange and it was weird, and it was kind of like, man, I kind of like both of these people, but Vosh is clearly killing them.
Right. So what were the two different flavors of
it comes from Vosh's personality. Vosh gets kind of edgelordy. He called out non-compete's wife. I can't remember her name. I've seen a few of her videos. She's pretty decent. But he called her out on some things, and then non-compete got involved. So non-compete and Vosh had this conversation, based on personal drama that led into political theory. That was just, Vosh knows his political theory, and non-compete was trying to. I don't think he was ready for the conversation.
Well, you always have to, you get yourself engaged in these kind of meandering brawls, right? And from what I understand about non-compete, he's more of a anarcho-communist, an anarchist communist, maybe.
Yeah, I had never heard of him. I started watching his channel, and then I started watching his videos. I'm like, yeah, I kind of like this dude too. So that's what really kind of made it weird. Watching the debate, I'm like, yeah, Vosh is killing this guy. I'm a baby socialist. I admit that. Like, I'm definitely not a Stalinist, but I'm not for revolution. So a lot of socialists wouldn't like my politic. So. But like, it was interesting to see two socialists go at each other. Just they were going for each other's throats, and it did introduce me to a new socialist and this new like red tube thing that I never really paid attention to.
Another good movie. This is by Warren Beatty about Jack Reed. The girlfriend and I watched it. It's got a couple of awards back in the day. It's called Reds, and Jack Reed is the man who wrote 10 Days That Shook the World, which is about the Russian Revolution, about how the Bolsheviks took up power. And it's a long movie, but it is so good. I've watched it several times. And
I saw it in theaters. I'm so goddamn.
Wow, you are so old. You saw Reds in the theater, Big Zebra Dog.
Yeah,
Reds.
Reds.
That does. Yeah, sounds familiar.
Yeah,
I'm old.
But that's the thing. That's the thing about socialist thought, is that there is a lot of theory and a lot of competing schools.
Yeah, well, my thing is we got to stop fighting with each other. All right, you guys, the tankies, I get that. Like, nobody wants Stalinism here in America. We don't want, government having absolute power. Definitely not a good thing, proven throughout history. But like, we've got to start figuring out ways to reach the right, because we're never going to do anything. We're never going to change the culture here in America, the work culture, unless we get the righties on our side. So we've got to figure that out. That's the jigsaw puzzle that we've got to figure out.
Yeah, well,
we need a flag.
That's the thing for me, at least, is that when I spend my time online, it isn't as much as arguing with other liberals. I like to do is that I like to go after the real enemy, which is actually the fascists. I know that sounds that sounds like a trite position, but yeah, I would rather fight the fascists than argue over the minutia of of socialist theory.
Like, do you think that there's any hope? Because I don't know if you saw, like, Stephanie Grisham came out. It was like on a CNN interview and kind of revealed that there are Republicans that were in Trump's administration meeting behind closed doors, trying to plan on how to stop Trump. Right? Like, is there any hope in that? Because like Trump has crushed all opposition before, but like these are supposedly high-ranking Trump administration officials.
I've said it, and Rach, I think that we were doing Chris's show. I said that the last line of defense is the military, the last line of defense, and that creates its own set of problems, right? The military, the politicization of the U.S. military, though it might save the republic, it would just be another. It would just be another firewall being burned through.
Oh, I'm going to be railing against it on my stream today because it's going to be on my other channel, the Disgruntled Leftist. And my thing is, Stephanie Grisham, why weren't you doing this when you were in the administration? Why weren't any of these administration officials doing anything to try to turn the tide when they were in power? You wait until after you're out of power before you try to do, like, to me, it's just ridiculous.
Well, yeah, I mean, even a cursory look at the American political scene, and you can see there's only one Bernie Sanders, there's only one AOC. There's a few, there's a bunch of other people doing good work. Don't get me wrong, but that's more the exception to the rule. Why? Because our political and our economic system incentivizes, I'll say it again, douchebaggery. It incentivizes the worst aspects of the human condition.
And it's going to be worse this time.
It's basic engineering. You put gunk in, you're going to get gunk out. And it just keeps a positive feedback loop. And that's what we're in, of crap.
If the worst happens in 2022, Trump could be walking into a House and a Senate that is governed by loyalists to Donald Trump. Yeah. It's going to be a fucking nightmare.
Well, you can even see the fact that he didn't come out to talk publicly on January 6th. This strategy that they're doing, this is the Virginia strategy, how they got the governorship there, is that Trump, they are playing for the middle to trick the middle, to trick the independents into voting Republican. So in 2024, this is exactly the scenario that they're hoping for, Rage. And that's the reason why Trump wasn't out talking on the 6th. This is why Trump is talking about maybe you should take your goddamn vaccines. Right. The only reason is to appeal to moderate voters in these tight elections during the midterm, so they can completely, go crazy and win in 2024.
Oh yeah, yeah, and right now it seems like the Democratic administration just has its hands tied and they're doing nothing, which is not a good thing heading into this year.
Yeah. It's all politics, right? I mean, it isn't as much as the laws. It's about, how can you convince people? I mean, I'm hoping with how Omicron is looking up, I'm hoping that the economy is going to turn around by the time November comes. I'm hoping that because let's face it, the way how the virus is evolving right now, it's more getting closer and closer, like the flu. So hopefully 6 months from now, in like, the second quarter, the third quarter, things will be turning around. And people will be in a better mood to vote for Biden and vote for the Democrats.
Yeah, and you'll have that summer period where cases are down just naturally. But they've got to do something. They've got to legislate, and they've got to be able to get their caucus on board. Schumer has failed. Schumer should not be in leadership. Neither should Nancy Pelosi. But Schumer has clearly failed. Schumer has not been able to get his caucus to go along with even it's a fairly moderate agenda compared to what it started as when me and you were both giving Joe Biden praise for being like the most progressive president in the history of the country. Now it's more of a moderate package, and they couldn't even get their caucus on board.
Well, this is why they should have tried to stack the Senate with getting Washington D.C. and Puerto Rico in the states. Right. And I know I've said this every single time, but I'm going to fucking keep saying it over and over again. They should have gotten Puerto Rico in. They should have gotten Washington, D.C. in the states. They should have just
Democrats play. They play fear they're afraid of the other side. They're afraid to overstep their bounds to where the other side will just leap over that line. The Democrats, they kind of like tamper with it, and they're like, nope, I ain't messing with that. And so they'll talk a big game, but every time they get in power, they never follow through. And it's mainly because Joe Manchin is a Republican, always has been. I remember on Chris's show, I was telling y'all, like, Joe Manchin is a bitch, man. Y'all, we don't have power. We don't have power.
Can I ask a question of you, American guys? You see, like, it seems to me from the outside looking in, which is not an accurate perspective, but that the Republicans are paid to win and that the Democrats are there to lose, but not enough so you can pretend you have a democracy.
Well, the thing is that that's an interesting conspiracy theory, and I like it. But I will say that.
Oh, I don't mean it as a conspiracy theory. I just mean as a practical, this is how it's turning out.
Sure. I will say that you hit it right on the nail on the head, is that Republicans are paid to win. And that's the difference. Since the destruction of unions here in the States, there isn't really anything that, structurally speaking, that can square off against Wall Street or square off against the oligarchs. So Republicans are paid, just like how Fox News is paid off to say the talking points of the Republican Party. They are paid. Thank you, Reagan tax cuts, because that was also an effect of the Reagan tax cuts. It's just all this wealth being accumulated, and that is what warps our system.
I've had more than a few people like bring the idea to me that it's two sides to one coin. Yeah.
Well, there is a, and once again, it's important to fight against false equivalency, right? I'm not gonna, as soon as I hear the Democrats are as bad as the Republicans, I go, if I had my red card's on the floor right now. I would say that's a false start. That is a false statement, because at no point are the Democrats, they are incompetent. I have my issues with them, of course, but they are not even they are not as bad as the Republicans. The Republicans are obviously, especially coming from a secular point of view, from a humanist point of view, is that they are by far worse than the Democrats.
Right. They are. I do agree with that.
Yeah.
Like the guy, oh my goodness. The guy this morning saying he was he didn't have the credentials or his respect or whatever. I don't have oh my goodness. That was ridiculous what he said, but I cannot recall the words.
Oh, Christopher Key, the urine man?
Yeah.
Yeah, the vaccine police. That's what he calls himself. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He was saying he didn't have any credentials.
I tried it.
You tried drinking your own pee?
What?
Isn't that what you're saying? Rach?
Yeah, I added some oregano.
Oh, wow. I hear that levels you up. If you add some turmeric, that's what's really supposed to be.
Maybe we need someone with some graphic skills to create a fake new brand called Golden Dew, or that's too close to Mountain Dew.
Yeah,
but
that would be
like drink up. The golden
showers.
alternative, Yeah.
There is someone on OnlyFans right now who is selling their pee probably to people. There's a woman who sold her own farts to people on OnlyFans. I'm sure there's someone selling their pee on.
That was total clickbait. Because not really. It was an interesting story, but I clicked on it. I'm like, what? She's selling her farts.
Yes.
Okay, how do we know they're real farts?
That's a good question, my friend. there should be some kind of barometer, or I don't know how you would.
Don't give me that synthetic stuff.
Imagine being somebody that bought one.
Yeah. Maybe they just bought a little bit of sulfur in a jar, and that it's got nothing to do with farts.
Yeah, you could be YouTube famous, or you could be celebrity famous, but are you sell your own farts famous? Because that's what that's really the top tier stuff right there. All right, so I'm going to close up the show. Thank you, Grant, Big Zebra, Tobin, Rage. When are you streaming, brother?
11 o'clock. So yeah, I gotta start getting that set up. 11 o'clock on my new channel, the Disgruntled Leftist. Hopefully it's not too hard to find. I don't have the link on me right now, but if you want to go check it out, I'm gonna be raging.
Is that
For
Eastern
disgruntled
Standard Time,
leftist.
Rich?
Yeah, half an hour.
Okay, thank you.
All right, take care, everyone in the chat. Thanks for showing up. We're doing the same crazy thing tomorrow. Take care. Shamala.
Shamala hamala.
Have a good one.